There have been quite a few times in my life where I have been fairly terrified. One, I was in middle school on a canoe trip, camp, summer camp, week-long thing, and almost drowned. Almost lost Hannah at 2 years old to a drowning. Our daughter Rachel, when she was 4, I think, got scarlet fever. And I remember scarlet fever from Little House on the Prairie. You know, that's what took Mary's sight, supposedly, according to the TV show. I don't know about the books, but so she gets scarlet fever, and I'm thinking, wow, this, is what's going to happen with that? One of the times that we were homeless, living in a camper in October, November. In Michigan, it gets a little cold in October and November, and wondering what's next and kind of being scared about what the future was going to be. As a kid, also, I got stuck in a snow tunnel. That was pretty terrifying. I could see the exit, and I was just stuck at my waist and just being terrified in that moment. Fear is a funny thing, isn't it? You guys have stories of, whether it's kids or yourself or something happened, and that fear still, even maybe years, decades later, can still kind of stick with you. Your mind goes back to that moment, and that feeling, that sense can kind of come back over you, and you still have that sense of dread or terror or incapacitation, or you are instantly transported back there, and you're reliving it again, and it's not an enjoyable experience. And I can think back to those moments, and I can, that the smells, the tastes, the sounds, everything about those moments come flooding back. And fear is an interesting thing, and fear is a powerful emotion in life and a powerful feeling that we have. And sometimes fear is a good thing. It can drive us away from bad situations. It can get us out of trouble if we are afraid of something. It can sharpen our mind. It can also incapacitate us, where you can freeze. Fear is a weird, strange, powerful emotion. And as we're walking towards the cross and we're looking at these questions around the cross, Jesus asked the disciples this question: why are you frightened? Why are you frightened? So let's look at it. Luke chapter 24. Luke chapter 24, it's the last chapter of Luke's gospel. So it's a few days after his resurrection, a few days after his crucifixion. So Luke chapter 24, we're going to read verses 35 through 43. As always, get your Bibles out, get your phones out. There might be something in there that you want to take some notes on, want to highlight, want to underline, or write in your margins. But Luke records it this way. Then the two from Emmaus, so this is just after you have Jesus on the road to Emmaus, where the two guys are walking. Jesus joins them on the journey. He has a conversation with them. He breaks bread with them, and then he disappears. These two guys, they run back to Jerusalem, the 7-mile journey. They run back to Jerusalem, back to the upper room to talk to the disciples. So then the two from Emmaus told their story of how Jesus had appeared to them as they were walking along the road, and how they had recognized him as he was breaking the bread. And just as they were telling about it, Jesus himself was suddenly standing there among them. "Peace be with you," he said. But the whole group was startled and frightened, thinking they were seeing a ghost. "Why are you frightened?" he asked. "Why are your hearts filled with doubt? Look at my hands. Look at my feet. You can see that it's really me. Touch me and make sure that I am not a ghost, because ghosts don't have bodies, as you see that I do." As he spoke, he showed them his hands and his feet. Still, they stood there in disbelief, filled with joy and wonder. Then he asked them, "Do you have anything to eat?" They gave him a piece of broiled fish, and he ate it as they watched. I see these two questions, and they're kind of powerful questions. Why are you frightened? Why are you doubting? And if I was one of the disciples, I might have looked at him and said, seriously? I mean, what do you mean, why are we frightened? We're standing here talking, and all of a sudden you just appear out of nowhere. What do you mean, why are we scared? We're obviously scared. You just show up. Doors are locked. And here you are standing amongst us, right in the middle of us, talking, eating. This is kind of crazy, Jesus. What do you mean, why are we Why are we scared? Why are you frightened? Why are you filled with doubt? These questions are powerful questions. Where I think the disciples are kind of maybe taken a little aback by them and kind of, I don't know if they pushed back them or what, but these questions about why are you frightened and why are you scared? What Jesus is asking in the frightened literally means, why are you falling back? You know, when we're scared, we can step back. Why are you falling back? Or, this is the powerful part of the question, why are you passive? And why do you doubt is literally about inner turmoil. You know when you're stressed, your stomach can be a little bit upset, your heart rate can start to speed up, your blood pressure increases under stress. This is kind of what Jesus is talking about. Why are you doubting? Why are you having this inner turmoil? Why are you having this, why are you falling back? Why are you passive? Why is your mind muddled? What's going on, fellas and gals? There's women up there too. Why? Why are you falling back? Notice, this is 2 days. So if you go back and you look at the story, you see that Jesus obviously died on Friday, right? So last week we talked about the question, do you still not know? Do you still not know who I am? Are you still asking me to prove myself to you? Are you still wondering who I am? That was in the upper room. Remember John chapter 13 through John chapter 17 is the upper room discourse. It's where Jesus is in the upper room, and he's talking to his disciples and all this teaching, this last-minute teaching, hours before his death. And he asks them, do you still not know? So this is on Friday night. This story is taking place on Sunday night. Where are the disciples still? They're still in the upper room. They're still in the upper room. You have the two gone from Emmaus. You have the ladies who have gone to the tomb and found Jesus. You have Peter and John who run to the tomb early Sunday morning. Where do Peter and John go after they've been to the tomb and seen the empty tomb? They go back to the upper room. So here's Jesus. He's died. He's risen. You have witnesses to the fact that the tomb is empty. You have witnesses who have talked to him. You have witnesses who have interacted with him. You have the Marys in the cemetery. You have the disciples on the road to Emmaus who are just sharing their story. You have Peter and John who know that the tomb is empty. And here they are huddled in this upper room. Not a huge space. Lots of questions. What's just happening? And the questions that Jesus is asking here is, why are you falling away? Why are you passive? It's not the fear. It's not the reaction. It's not the, I love a good scare. I love, it's kind of fun scaring Chris. Chris isn't here. Hopefully she's not watching. But, it's kind of fun standing around the corner and scaring Chris. It's kind of easy. So it takes a little bit of the thrill out of it. But I like a good scare. I don't say that I like getting scared too much. But I like scaring people. It's not that kind of scared. It's not the, it's over with and then you punch the person. I just about did that to Handy the other day. She was hiding behind the refrigerator on me. Walked around the corner and she jumps out when the kitchen was dark. It was a good one. I got scared one time watching, this has nothing to do with this morning, but I was watching Friday the 13th. I was in middle school. I didn't know our town had a little festival, Maple Syrup Festival. Maple syrup's the best thing ever. Maple Syrup Festival, and one of the downtown businesses in the back room had a movie fest going, and they were showing Friday the 13th. I didn't even know what it was. I just kind of went back there and watched this movie, and one of those scenes where, was it Jason or Michael or whatever it is, he jumps out, and I was standing because there was no place to sit, and I got so scared I actually fell on the ground. This is not the kind of fear that Jesus is talking about. It's not the boo. It's not the This is a fear that is paralyzing. This is a fear that is moving the disciples away from Him. It's a fear of the unknown. It's a fear of the unexplained. It's a fear of the disappointed. It's a fear of the uncertain. It's a fear of Jesus we thought we knew. So 2 days ago, don't you know? And He reminds them who He is. Don't you know who I am? You don't have to see the Father because you've seen me. You've seen the miracles. You've seen all this stuff. 2 days later, their faith is slipping. 2 days ago, they were willing to die for Jesus. 2 days ago, they're like, Peter's like, oh no, I'll fight for you. And he takes a sword and he chops off Malchus's ear. And Jesus is like, stop this. And you're like, we're going to fight for you. 2 days later, their faith is slipping. 2 days later, they're becoming passive. 2 days later, their boldness is slipping. 2 days later, their courage is waning. 2 days later, Jesus is showing up and asking, why are you frightened? Why have you slipped into passivity? Why have you slipped into inaction? Remember all the stuff we did 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago? Remember all that stuff that we did? Here you are, 2 days later, still hiding in the upper room. You haven't even gone home. Have you guys eaten? Well, they had broiled fish because they gave Jesus some broiled fish. But 2 days. 2 days, He said, why are you frightened? Why are you doubting? Why is your faith waning? Why are you falling away? Why are you in such turmoil? Why is your mind such a scrambled mess? Why is your heart and your stomach? Why are you so? Didn't you know? Don't you remember? And these are the questions the disciples are faced with. And then what does Jesus say? He says, go ahead, touch me. Go ahead, touch me. It literally means to be manhandled. Jesus is offering Himself, okay, grab my hands, lift my arm, see the scar, touch my feet, feel my hands. Go ahead. Let me prove it to you again. It's like one of the cool things about Jesus is through the doubt. Last week He said, just believe. Don't you know? Just believe. I don't have to prove it to you again, He says. And He does. But He says, just believe. 2 days later, same question, same thing, same struggle. Why are you afraid? Don't you believe? Touch me, handle me, feel, see, know. Jesus has this cool way of offering Himself and proving Himself and repeating Himself even through our doubt and through our fear. He calls us on it. He calls us on our knowledge. He calls us on our belief. He calls us on our action. He calls us on our mindset. He calls us on our attitude. He calls us out on it. And He expects more out of us. But He also say, okay, touch me, see, feel me. It's me, guys. It's me. Why are you still here? Why are you still doubting? Why are you so stressed? Why are you so worried? That usually fixes things, doesn't it? When you're stressed and you're worried and you're upset and like, why? You kind of want to slap them, don't you? So, just relax. That fixes things, doesn't it? Just relax. That's kind of what Jesus is telling the disciples. Just believe. Guys, relax. It's me. Why are you filled with doubt? Why do you have doubt in your life? It's me. We look at our life and Jesus can mess with us. We can get really disappointed and we can get really frustrated with him. I think the disciples were really frustrated because Jesus didn't do what they expected him to do. He didn't do what they wanted him to do. He didn't do what they asked him to do. They wanted him to deliver them. They wanted him to go away from Jerusalem. They never wanted to be to Jerusalem in the first place. They had expectations of him. They had expectations of deliverance. They had expectations of an earthly rule. They had expectations of we're going to show those Romans. They had expectations of kingdom, of deliverance. They had all of these expectations. They had expectations maybe of position. Remember the disciples asking, hey, Jesus, can we sit on your right hand? Can we sit on your left? We want authority. We want power. This is what we want, Jesus. This is part of why we signed up, is we want the benefit. We want the good things. And Jesus is constantly disappointing them. Jesus is constantly ticking them off. Jesus is constantly doing things that they don't want to do. Saying things that he shouldn't say. Going places he shouldn't go. And expecting them to come along. And they follow along like, what in the world are we doing? Even after his resurrection, they ask, Jesus, now are you going to restore your kingdom? They have all of these expectations, and Jesus is constantly disappointing and letting them down. And so they're sitting in their upper room, and they're filled with doubt, and they're filled with turmoil because once again, Jesus has disappointed them. Because he's dead. He's gone. Now the tomb is empty. Now what does that mean? Jesus had told them all along what was going to happen. They should have known. They should have been expecting. But here they are as a group, huddled around in the room, dark, quiet, trying not to get in trouble, trying not to draw attention to themselves. Because if Jesus was killed, maybe we're going to get killed. If Jesus was at risk, maybe we're at risk. And I certainly don't want to do that. So all these guys and gals are up there in the upper room kind of hiding, and Jesus shows up and goes, fella, what are you doing? Why are you frightened? I told you this was going to happen. Why are you doubting? Why are you falling away so quickly, so easily? 2 days. 2 days from the crucifixion. Same day as the resurrection. We celebrate the resurrection. It's proof. The disciples are falling away and their faith is weakening. Why are you doubting? Why are you falling away? Why are you so full of turmoil? Why are you so disturbed? You should be rejoicing. You should be active, not passive. But how true is this of us? Where Jesus is constantly disappointing. Our faith, we constantly get disappointed because we pray and we expect and we want and we desire and we ask and we seek and maybe we fast and we do these things that we want Jesus and we expect Jesus to do things for us or to give us or to honor us or to bless us or something. And it seems like Jesus is constantly disappointing us. Not living up to the expectations and the desires. And I think the question that he may ask us today is, why are you frightened? Why are you falling away? Why are you passive in your faith? Is it simply because I didn't meet your expectations and I didn't give you what you wanted and I didn't do what you wanted? Don't you remember who I am? Don't you remember I have a different plan, a different path, a different vision? Why are you passive? Why are you full of doubt? Why do you have doubt? Why are you so in turmoil, internal turmoil? Why are you so disturbed? Don't you know who I am? I see these 2 days and these two questions as intimately linked. Do you believe? Well, the disciples obviously were struggling with that belief because of the questions that Jesus asks, because of the fact that they were still hiding in the upper room. so quick from belief to doubt, from expectation to disappointment. And how quickly they throw up their hands, how quickly we throw up our hands and say, God, I'm not sure about you anymore. I'm doubting, I don't know. And as he offers himself to his disciples to touch, to feel, to look, I think the same thing is being offered to us. He says in the Bible, test my spirits and see. We can look back. I love the story of David, how when David faced Goliath, he remembered the lion and the bear. Well, I know God delivered me then. I know he'll deliver me now. If God did it then, I know he'll do it now. I don't understand, but I'm going to stand in faith, and I'm going to stand in belief, and I'm going to stand in strength and power because I know what God has done before. Church, we have the same question and the same expectation. As Jesus proved himself to his disciples over time and expected them to remember that and expected them to act and behave on that moving into the future, he has the same thing for us today. That when things don't go our way, when we don't have an answer to prayer the way that we want or the way that we expect, or frankly, the way that we think we deserve, we get a little disappointed. We get a little frustrated. We get a little angry. And it can seem maybe a little cold for him to ask these questions of his disciples. But sometimes I think we need that kick in the pants. Like, why? Don't you know who I am? Don't you remember what I've done? Don't you remember? Don't you know who I am? Okay, let me reassure you one more time. Let me reaffirm myself to you one more time. His actions frequently cause chaos in our life. Frequently cause chaos. I mean, we can all tell stories of things that man, took a left turn. That our world just got turned upside down. We all have those stories. Do we believe that God is still God? We still touch him and feel him and know that he is still God. And then the question becomes valid. Why are you frightened? Why do you doubt? Why aren't you believing me? Why aren't you trusting me? Why aren't you honoring me? Why aren't you active? I think that for me, as I look at this, for me, it's the question of frightened. If he's asking them, why are you passive? Why have you shrunk back? It's like we shrink back into the weeds. You know, when somebody questions our faith, questions, our belief, questions, what has happened when we start to question that we become passive in our faith. That maybe we aren't living the way that we should live. Maybe we aren't saying the things that we should say. Maybe we aren't praying. Maybe we aren't reading. Maybe we aren't doing the things that we do. For me, this is the struggle about being passive. Like, well, God, if you aren't going to do for me, I'm not going to do for you. God, if you aren't going to answer the way I want, well, maybe you don't deserve my time and attention. I think, church, this can be us. This can be you. As you look at your quote-unquote disappointments and maybe blame God for that, how are you responding? Are you still in the upper room? Are you frightened? Are you passive? Is your faith slipping? Are you doubting? Are you questioning God and saying, God, I'm really not sure you are who you say you are, God. You really need to come through for me. If you really want me to believe, if you really want me to do something with this, God, you really need to prove it to me. And he's saying, I already have. How are you doing in your faith? How are you doing in honoring God with your life? Are you frightened? Are you doubting? Stressed? Turmoil? Slipping? As Jesus offered himself to be touched and examined by his disciples, I truly believe that he'll do this for you. How specifically, I have no idea. But I know it starts with your story. I know it starts with the way that God has been faithful to you over the years and through time. I know that he has proven himself to you if we stop, if we think, if we pray, if we look, if we just breathe, just relax. It's not an easy answer, but sometimes it's the best answer. And we allow God to reaffirm himself to us, reassure us that he hasn't abandoned us. He really hasn't disappointed us. There is something better coming. There is something greater that he has. It's different. Keep your faith. Keep active. Keep moving. Get out of the upper room. Maybe your upper room is a bed and blankets and covers. And you get in bed and you pull the covers up over your head and you just want to block the world out. Maybe your upper room is a bottle. And you're crawling into the bottle and you're just, I'm going to forget about this. Maybe your upper room is a relationship. Maybe your upper room is a computer. Where are you hiding? The disciples were hiding. Where's your hiding place? We're going to close with a song, and again, the rocks are up here. This is kind of cool. I see some rocks that were here that weren't here last Sunday, so somebody has come up and taken some this morning, or maybe during the week, I don't know, and put them up here. But these rocks represent they can represent stuff, they can represent things, they can represent people, commitments. If you want to come up and take a rock, take it back with you. If you want to leave it on the altar and say, Lord, I'm going to trust you. Or take it with you and as a reminder of God's presence in your life, God's faithfulness in your life. But how do you respond? How are you responding this morning to Jesus asking you the question, are you frightened? Or are you doubting? Because we're not supposed to be. And that's the point of the question that Jesus is asking is, I see that you are, but you're not supposed to be. This isn't the way you're supposed to be reacting, fellas. So how are you reacting and responding? Are you frightened? Are you full of doubt? Seek Jesus. Look for him. I promise he will show himself to you. Let's stand and sing.
Well, in response, we're going to sing that song, New Wine, and